And we're off to the races.
Woohoo!
I'm just going to make sure that it's going live on YouTube because I've got the page open. And here we are. Hey, okay, cool. So hello for those of you who are watching.
I'm going to do one thing so that we don't lose. I want to plug in my computer because I just unplugged it.
That would be really,
so
really good.
You do the intro.
I'll intro. So today, Karine, or for those Anglophones, Karine, and I are going to be speaking about sex-positive relationships. And that's whether or not you're married. And we're going to hear Karine's story. So I'm in Southwest France. Karine is it Montreal where you are?
No,
Quebec?
I'm in Ontario.
Oh, Ontario.
But I'm from Quebec.
Yeah. So she's in Ontario. And we were just doing our vocal warm-ups here because she's a singer and a music teacher as well as a sex-positive educator coach. So I thought we'd start by getting to know you a bit more. And if you could kind of introduce yourself and lead us into the juicy story that is the teacher path.
The teacher turned coach or sex positive relationship coach. So I'm Karine Bedard, as she said. And so, yeah, my story is very interesting because I was I'm a Bible school graduate turned Playboy enthusiast. So I grew up very fundamentalist Christian. And that meant that I had a very, very strict worldview, and it was all based on what the Bible said, right? Or at least that's what I thought, right? So, I got married young at Bible school, like met my husband at Bible school, got married at 22, started a family at 26, and probably about 15 years later, my husband just had like a lot of doubts about certain things that just he needed answering before he would kind of progress. It was like one of those pivotal moments, right? So either I'm just going to go wholeheartedly into my faith and just really, really go all out, or there's some, I've got some questions that have to be figured out before I can do that. And so
doubts about your faith, then you mean your husband was having doubts about the faith?
I'm not sure if it was doubts about the faith, but doubts about like how certain things didn't quite line up, like different denominations had different beliefs, and they were fundamentalist as well. And just little nagging things that just didn't quite add up for him. I was blissfully ignorant at the time. I was the church pianist and the worship leader. And, I just, everything was fine. So I thought, but I really always struggled to fit in. Like I never quite felt like I could be my complete authentic self, but that was just part of being a Christian and being a Christian wife, and I'm kind of an independent, strong woman. But I really bought into the submissive wife, right? Like I worked really hard to be a good submissive wife. And, that was just honoring to God. And so I just really took that. But in that, like, there's a lot of like losing yourself. The two become one. That's a very like biblical concept, right? And marriage, the two become one. And that really means that you lose yourself in a sense and become one, right? Like, and sometimes one partner thinks that way and the other partner's like, well, no, I don't need to become one, but that's not necessarily communicated because you think this is just how it is. I remember in Bible school, one of my hallmates, anyways, she was getting married and she decided that, so you have your unity candle and then you have the two candles on the side.
Right.
Yeah. Like trying to
I forgot about that.
Right?
Yeah.
You light the candles and then you turn them and you light the middle candle.
The one candle.
And then you blow them out. Well, she's like, I'm not blowing them out. They're going to stay because we're both going to be our own individual people. And I was like, oh, how could you do that? You're such a rebel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was kind of like the antithesis of the unity candle ceremony.
Right. And we went a step further, not just the unity candle. We did this like, so white wine and red wine, and we poured it into into the same glass, and the two can never be separated.
Man.
You can't separate the two. They become one mixture, right?
Right.
So I, in my ceremony, had so much symbolism of that kind. So like that's what I was taught, is that marriage is really like, you're married forever, and this is the one person, and you become, completely that
enmeshed.
Yeah. And so to think that you have your own identity and that you can just live kind of on your own terms was not even a part of my thinking. And I married someone who's very independent and could have been a hermit. And he even said so before we married, right? Like he said, I think I could be a hermit. And I was like, what? Who could be a hermit? And I'm so the opposite of that. I mean, I hate people, I love people, and I love to talk with people. Like, so, I mean, this whole idea, when and I didn't listen to that, right? Like I just was like, oh yeah, we'll get married and the two become one, and then we're responsible to each other, right? Like that's just how it goes. Yeah. Well, I was sorely disappointed because he really needed his space and needed his own time and independence. And I was like, but I'm doing all these things for you, for us, and putting you as the priority all the time. And like, and it almost felt suffocating to him, So like, just a lot of things like that, a lot of concepts. Anyways, so when he shared with me that he had sort of stepped away, like did all this research and then had found that it didn't add up to him. And I was like, what? Like, this was like the worst thing you could, because I had sacrificed everything for this Christian man. Right. And I have to say, like, wonderful man, but was never like my ideal kind of person, because that wouldn't have been the right choice. Right. You were told you pick someone like this and da 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 da. So I did all that. I picked the right kind of person, someone with great integrity and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, I'll talk about this later, but like there's things about a relationship that I think we need to look for that are more important than other things, and in our generation for sure, and especially in my belief system, we weren't taught that, right? Like I tell my kids all the time, I say, like, what I would say to my 19-year-old self, is like, how do you feel in your body around people? How does this friend or this person make you feel? Do you feel like you're walking on eggshells, or do you feel like you're stressed around them, or do you feel comfortable and like there's an equal energy exchange? Right. What is that? Like, how does that play out? And the people that you don't feel like comfortable with, your body's telling you that you're not a match vibrationally and energetically. Like, it's just, they're not your people, and that's okay. Right. You don't need their approval, and you don't need them to like you, and you don't need them to be your best friend, and you don't need to win them over. You just can go, oh, they're not my tribe. These people are, and that's okay. And I'm going to be with these people, and they're the ones I feel super comfortable with, and I can be vulnerable and I can be myself, and so exactly. I just wish I would have learned that. So continuing on with my journey, sorry, I have stuff I can't see through my
so your husband wasn't your tribe, essentially.
Yeah. And
not a natural fit.
No,
maybe a logical.
Yes. Yeah. Logical fit. Great. And I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't trade anything, because we helped each other grow up. Like we really did. Like I came from a very people pleaser mentality family, and he did not. And so we kind of helped each other kind of come in the middle a little bit. And so I was able to learn, boundaries towards other people really well. But I did not have boundaries with him because I didn't think I was allowed to, because boundaries are a fence. That's what I thought. Right. So anyways, he shared this with me. I was absolutely devastated. But it started me on a journey of just kind of researching, because I did respect him so much. I respected what he thought and how he processed things. And so I went on this journey, and part of my journey was listening to the worst of the worst. So like in the church, these sex people, people that like sex and
shady
so
singers.
of course, I had Sirius Radio at the time. I turned to Playboy Radio. I mean, isn't that the logical choice?
The worst of the worst.
Fundamentalist Christian, right? So I started listening to Playboy Radio like 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted to find out how terrible these people were, right? Like I was just like, how awful are they? Because like I can't step out of this world or even consider stepping out into this horrible world that I've been taught has no joy and no love and no, like they're just so lost. And
lost in the darkness.
I'm gonna start at the worst. So I started listening, and I was like, these are my people.
In a twist of fate.
I know. I was shocked. I was like, these people are intelligent and confident, authentic. They know who they are and what they want. They're not doing this because they have no self-worth. This is actually quite the opposite. They seem to have a lot of self-worth and self-respect, and they respect each other, and there's not judgment, and they're loving and connected to each other. And I was like, this does not add up. Like when you talk cognitive dissonance, that was big time cognitive dissonance, like really big time. And so I was like, I think it gave me the permission to start to question things, because obviously if that's what I'd been told my whole life and that really was not adding up, then maybe other things aren't adding up either. And what I discovered is that people in the world are actually pretty amazing people, and they're not as joyless as I thought. Like they're not stuck like some people, and they're just beautiful people and willing to be authentic and have authentic connections. And I was like, wow, like this is cool. Like I'd never experienced that before, like, because I always had to sort of conform and fit in this box and have it all together and be godly and this and that. And I mean, I knew my stuff. I really did.
Yeah. You were a church piano player.
And I was a graduate. I mean, come on.
Right. And so to translate for those people who didn't grow up in the church, the vocabulary of the world was like, there were those that were saved in the church, and then there was the world. It was everybody that was secular, that was outside, that was heathen, the people that hadn't seen the light. Therefore, they were in the dark. And when you're in the dark, things are pretty bad, like pretty, as you said, depressing, evil, lost, whatever it is. So that's why the stark surprise when you got out and looked around.
And I was taught that, like, I totally forgot what I was going to say, but just the idea that they just couldn't have joy, right? They just couldn't.
Or love.
And the only way you can love is through Christ.
Right.
Because
So
I had no love in and of myself, is what I had been taught. Like I didn't have my own love. The only reason that I had love is because of Christ.
Christ channeling his love through you as the vessel
to love.
Yeah.
So it's kind of scary, right? Like, oh, I won't be able to love if I leave. And I mean, just like, and you're not really supposed to question anything, because if you're looking at other things that aren't Christian based, then you're reading the wrong things, and Satan's gonna confuse
Yeah.
you, you know?
Get a foot in the door
Yes,
and corrupt your mind
exactly.
and your
And so
spirit. Yeah.
there's always an answer as to why something, like if you're having doubts and you're having, oh, you're just reading the wrong things and you just need to read the right things. And it's like, well, that's like circular reasoning. Like that's not gonna, but you don't think that. And so I remember I would like step out of the box and I'd look in because I would evaluate other faiths all the time and be very critical of their faith and
Mm-hmm.
find all the holes and everything. But I didn't do that to mine. So I stepped out of the box and I'd look in and I'd be like, ooh, there's some things that aren't quite adding up. And but then I'd jump back in and I'd be like, okay, but it was so scary to do that. I was like hardcore. Like I abhorred Sunday Christians, people who just show up. Like to me, it was a daily thing. Like Jesus was my best friend. You know what I mean? Like I talked to him all the time. And so anyways, enough about that. But that's kind of like, that's the background I come from. And I do want to say, like, I did not ever want to rebel from that. Yeah. And I think that's really important because people are like, oh, you just left because you were mad at God or this. No, I really wasn't. I wasn't at all. And it was the most devastating thing to research and to watch the thing that you've put everything, your whole faith in, kind of crumble. Because you've always been taught that there are no errors in the Bible. There's no this, it all holds up. But when you look at it and you scrutinize, you start to see holes and you start to see things that you would have never seen before. So just a lot of things that just started to not hold up, which was so sad. I feel like I was standing on a table and one of the legs was knocked out. Yeah. And I just didn't know, where to go or how to stand or whatever. So anyways, we rebuilt our worldview from the ground up together. Right. So that was quite a process. But it was
you and your husband were doing this at the same time.
Yeah.
You were questioning your faith and looking outside of the church for different teachings or different points of view.
Yeah. Yeah. And he, and it was so interesting because like when we left the faith, when we told the church right away, it was like, I could no longer play the piano at church. He couldn't lead worship. Like, it was just like, we were done. And nobody came and like followed up or asked how we were doing, or could we help you? Do you have questions? Nothing. It's like, we were all of a sudden just like, it's like,
you're shunned.
Well, not just that. It's like, we can't talk to them. They're going to corrupt us.
Ostracized, outcast.
So weird.
I've heard that a lot. Yeah, I've heard that a lot. That you're like leprous, and you can't be in you can't be in proximity because they're because they be contagious.
They had to give us to Satan in order for him to deal with us.
Yeah.
Right. Like, get rid of the bad apple in that might taint the whole bunch. Right. And I understood everything that was happening from the other side, right? Because I understood it, but it was like, wow, and even now it's like my parents, my dad especially, like, just preach at us so much. And it's like, that I can see how that tactic does not work. It's like, and as Christians, we always thought it was so powerful, witnessing and sharing our faith to people. But oh my gosh, people just go, okay, thanks, bye. Like, it feels like vile.
Yeah.
Like you're being, So
yeah, it's like a used car salesman of your soul.
Yeah, that's a good way.
It's very intimately dirty.
It is. And I think it's because the premise is that you need something because you aren't okay the way you are.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what drew me to the world, right? Or to this like more critical thinking is that, oh, there's a whole bunch of people that actually honor and respect you having your own thoughts and your own making your own decisions and your own making your way through life and like actually thinking through things and asking questions. Like that was honored and celebrated. And it was like, oh, I can actually use my mind to its full potential. Like I can really like question things and I can not have to know the answers. I don't have to know everything. What? That's so cool because I knew that I knew that I knew. Like I knew.
Yeah, you have to be right. Have
It
all
was
the right
so
answers.
freeing. It was so freeing. So, yeah. I mean, that's a long version of that. I didn't quite mean to get into that, but you know, I guess he's gonna be interested.
Yeah, a lot of people are, you know, caught in that position where they love the church and they love the teachings and they love their community. And then they get to a place where they want to ask questions or they're seeing things a little bit differently. And then they get the boot and then they get ostracized. It's really, really painful. But it was, you know, it was parallel with me when I divorced. I had to question my faith because my faith wouldn't let me divorce. So anyways, back to you. So you guys were on the path of discovery.
So when I was listening to Playboy Radio, I came
Playboy Radio.
You know, my new hobby and pastime.
Yeah.
So I started listening to a show. I came across a show called Swing with Michael and Holly. And I was like, what is going on here? So she was a Mormon before. She had deconverted. And she was remarried to Michael, and she realized that she was bisexual. And because of that, they decided to, he let her explore her sexuality, and they explored her sexuality together. And so I discovered the world of swinging, and I was like, what is this thing? So I was like, these people are sharing sex with other people outside of their marriage. What? Like that happened? Like what? That's a thing? And not only that, they just had such a cool relationship, and they were talking about their experiences and celebrating each other and just encouraging each other to be who they were and be authentic and laughing, and just I was just in awe because it was the kind of relationship that I'd always wanted, right? And I was like, how is it that everything I've been told would be absolutely wrong? They're like healthy and have a thriving relationship. Like this just did not compute for me. Again, cognitive dissonance. And I went to my husband. I was like, you'll never guess this thing that I just heard today. Like there's people that like what they share, like sharing is caring. Like they share sexual experiences with, like, are there around other people that are naked? Like what? I just can't. What?
Yeah.
I just couldn't.
Right. Even seeing somebody naked was already like, that wasn't your spouse, much less being in a room with them and then touching them and like, oh,
I know. And just the idea that would be, that they were cool with it. And I like it again was so much cognitive dissonance. And I just started listening to their show every week. It was like a certain day at 1:00. I think it was Wednesday and Fridays at 1:00. And I was like always sure to make sure that I was listening to it because I was fascinated. So then I started discovering and listening to podcasts about swingers. And it's called The Lifestyle, like out in the world, outside of the swinging world. They call it swingers or like key parties or whatever. But actually in the swinger world, we call it the lifestyle. It's the LS or the lifestyle because it's a lifestyle and there's a community and it's just such a connected world and it's beautiful. And it's like swinging has such a negative connotation, but we know how beautiful of a world that is, right? Like, so anyways, so I'm listening to these podcasts and then hearing people's experiences and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I could ever do that. Like, ooh, like that's crazy, you know? And let's just also mention that we were both virgins when we got married, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was that.
Wow.
And yeah, so that, you know, like you don't mess with that because sex is the glue that holds your relationship together. I mean, that's what I was taught. Sex is sacred. It holds your relationship together and it's very important. So I had to unravel a lot of thinking. I mean, it forced me to really kind of think through a lot of concepts, just coming to this realization. So, you know, fast forward.
Wait, hold on. Were you
Okay.
kind of like apprising your husband the entire time about your investigations
Oh, yeah.
into this? Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were talking about it all the time. And
Yeah.
he was like, oh, and we'd listen to podcasts together every once in a while. But it was like, it kind of was like a second honeymoon because all of a sudden we could like start talking about things that we'd always maybe fantasized about, or it just opened the door to a lot
Yeah.
of different conversations and they weren't off limits anymore,
Right.
which was new, right? Like, because, you know, you always had to like think a certain way and be a certain way and everything. And all of a sudden there were no rules. We're like, "Ew."
Mm.
So, yeah, so that was really interesting. So it was a very interesting journey. And I remember the first time we went to an event, we're like, okay, we're just going to go to this event and just see what these people are like, you know? And like literally within 5 minutes, I was like, the mothership has landed. These are my people. Like, it was so comfortable. People are so warm and welcoming and non-judgmental. Like you can be who you are 100%. So I tell my clients a lot, I'm like, if you want a place where you belong, like we all want to fit in, we all want to connect, we all want to be a part of a group of people where, and I mean, we all are wired for community, right? Which is why I think churches,
Right.
people stay in the church because they're afraid to lose a community, you know? And
Yeah.
I think if you don't have a community, you can easily get lost in the world, right? But like
Right.
that sense of community is just so important. And like this community is so, so beautiful. And I think people have no idea the depth of amazing people that there are in this community.
Why do you think that this community would attract amazing people, or what brings this culture?
What we're here to talk about, sex positivity. And that was the beginning of the whole journey for me, right? Through listening to Playboy, I just discovered a whole world of sex positivity. And people are like, what's sex positivity? Sex positivity is about not shaming sex and honoring pleasure and allowing that to be a part of you and to not feel guilty about owning your pleasure and allowing other people to enjoy their own pleasure, you know, without shaming them or judging them. And I think that we live in a world where it's like, oh, you can't talk about that, you know, or oh, you want to do what, you know, or and I was the girl who was a virgin when I got married, but like I couldn't wait to get married so I could finally have sex. You know, like I was a
Yeah.
sexual being my whole life, you know, and masturbation was not allowed in my house.
Wow.
I got in trouble
Yeah.
many times from a young age, you know, so it was a very shameful thing. And to all of a sudden be in a place where like people are talking about this as a healthy thing and loving yourself and knowing your own body so that you can communicate that to someone else. I was like, what? What is that? You know, like it was just so freeing and beautiful to finally go, oh, other people think about this and other people honor this side of themselves and I'm not weird and there's nothing wrong with me. And Like there doesn't have to be all these strict rules around sex. And I think that was a big thing, you know, because sex was supposed to be this sacred thing, you know, and now it's like sex can just be sex and love can just be love, and they don't need each other in order to be whole. Yet, so I think of them as two different circles, right? They can line up as much as you want. Like the MasterCard symbol, right? Like you can connect it as much as you want. You can have and the thing is, like, a lot of people put such expectation on sex that it has to be this mind-blowing soul, you know, experience. And it's like the epitome of your love together, like making love. Well, sometimes you can have sex without making love with your partner. Like it's just sometimes it's just a thing that you can do and just have fun and just be creative or whatever. And it doesn't have to say anything about the depth of your love. And then sometimes it's just such an expression of love. And the thing is, when you can separate the two and you get to choose that, a whole world opens up, right? Because it's no longer a pressured thing, and it's no longer the gauge of your relationship. It's no longer, you know, the metric by which we measure success in a relationship or in the right. So I think that that's a really important distinction, and that's freeing in itself to just let go of the expectation of what sex has to be or doesn't have to be, you know.
And we do entangle that with love many times, and I think that can get really, really confusing for people when they can't differentiate between the two. Right, or are expecting. I'm just like, when you're talking about that, I was thinking of, you know, this girl that had said like, oh, I was so in love with this man and I waited and then we finally, you know, got to have sex and it was awful. We weren't at all, like, everything was a turn off. It was horrible.
Right? Like, and like, that's not, you're not taught that that's an important part of the relationship.
Yeah.
And then you're taught that this relationship is forever.
Right. Exactly.
And, you know, after marriage, so you don't talk about it before marriage and then after marriage. That's also the metric by which you gauge the health of your relationship. That makes no sense. That's just, you know, an accident waiting to happen, really.
Yeah, it's a very ill-thought structure. So you went straight from being in a church community as being an integral part of the church to then being in a swinger community. What was that shift like for you as far as like when you landed? You said
probably
you felt like home.
A year in between, like a year of like that transition. And the whole year in between, I was just like, just kind of researching the beauty of why this world would be important to me. Like, why would it be important to, you know, risk connecting with people outside of my marriage or flirting? So one thing you have to know about me is that when I grew up, like all my friends were guys. I got along with guys. They were easy. My girlfriends stabbed me in the back. So I had no interest in having close girlfriends because I just couldn't trust them very much, you know? And I think part of it is that I could get along so easily with the guys that they felt intimidated by that because maybe they didn't know how, I don't know. But like, it was just very easy for me to get along with the guys. And it was, they respected me and gave me nice attention and things like that, but they were very respectful to me. Right. And then I remember the day when my future husband said, you know, so I'm like running up and down the halls at Bible school with my friend. And he said, well, and my friend was a guy, right? So like we're being stupid running up and down the halls. And I remember him saying, you know, if we get married, this is going to have to stop. or if we get engaged, this is going to have to stop.
Right.
And like, I knew in my heart that it would have to. And the thing is, like, when I think back, it's like, he wasn't bothered by this at all. Like, he wasn't a jealous type person. He wasn't bothered by it. It's the fact that this is what the requirement was. This is what he would look bad if he couldn't control his wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was that.
It's understood.
Yeah. So I had to give up my guy friends. And then, you know, so everything changes. And then you get married. And now this person is supposed to be your one person. And let's be honest, if that person is not like you, all of a sudden they're your forever, and they, like, there's resentment when they're not giving you what you need and have taken away the things that you thrived on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was like, I didn't realize that I was resenting, but I remember, like, even in the first year, I was like crying because I just felt so lonely. And he was fine because he just had his own time, and he was like, we wanted different things. And not to say that we didn't get along, but like the amount of time that we needed from someone. And I mean, I was growing up there. I had a lot of wounds and stuff that I had insecurities that I was expecting him to meet, because I had been taught that this person is like your half, right? And they complete you and all this kind of stuff. And I had made a really good choice, right? So it was very discouraging to realize that I was going to be lonely my whole life. You know what I mean? That it wasn't like all fulfilling, because I really thought it would be. You know, it was like this magic when you got married. And I wish that more people realize that. I mean, the thing is, it's the programming, right? Like this religious and societal programming that tells us in a relationship, you meet each other's needs. And if they don't read your mind, they don't love you enough. Or if, you know, you should be able to communicate what you need, and it should be understood. Should. We should on ourselves all over the place, you know? And so I think just this like understanding, for me, self-care and self-love was very selfish, because I'm like, well, that's his responsibility, right? Like, and it's my responsibility to love him. Right. And so it's just this, like, these mindsets that, and I mean, to me, that's kind of toxic monogamy, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with monogamy at all. It's just like, we have these toxic ideas, you know, and this like jealousy means love. And, you know, so you should be jealous if your woman talks to someone else, or if your guy's checking out another girl. It's like, when you get married, your attraction doesn't turn off. And if it does, that's going to affect you in the bedroom. You know, like when you force someone to shut off their sexual desires in one area, it's going to be affected in another area. But that, we don't talk about that, right? We don't talk about the fact that it's intense pressure to be someone's everything, you know?
Yeah, it's not fair on them, and it's not fair on you.
No. And so what I've discovered now, just different relational skills, is just that I get to love myself for who I am, and I'm responsible for, you know, filling myself up and meeting my own needs, and everything else is an extra. It's added on top of that. And it doesn't mean that you don't have needs that you can ask for from your partner, because we all have this desire to connect. But if you are relying on your partner for everything and to meet all your needs, that's where there's going to be a severe breakdown, because that's impossible. It's impossible for one person to meet all of your needs, because we are inherently all very different. So that's why I'm very passionate about normalizing ethical non-monogamy. And there's a big difference between non-monogamy and ethical non-monogamy. And people are like, well, what's ethical non-monogamy? Non-monogamy is well, monogamy is one man, one woman, one partner, another partner, but like one sexual partner, right?
Yeah.
And typically for life, that's the true definition of monogamy. A lot of people are serial monogamous, so they'll be monogamous for a time and then
Serial
move on to
monogamous.
be monogamous again, and then but that's not true monogamy in the biblical sense, right?
It's just it's culturally acceptable
Yeah.
to be a serial monogamous because then you're still on like the
right. You still fit that social program, you know,
normal side. Yeah.
Yeah. So non-monogamy, but I mean, let's be honest. How many people cheat?
Yeah. It's pretty high.
There's a huge, I was like, I need to get that statistic. I have it written down somewhere. It's
yeah,
a high.
I think it's a little bit higher for men than for women, but at some point in your life, there's been infidelity. I think it was 74% of the time.
Yep. And so there is physical cheating, so like sex, but there's also emotional infidelity, which that adds another layer. And that was the most horrible thing, right? To like connect with someone emotionally. But if you really think about how we're wired, I mean, there's some people that you are allowed to connect with emotionally outside of your marriage, and there's some people that you're not. It happened to be that the people that I always connected with emotionally, like energetically, and it didn't mean I was in love with them, but I mean, the people I really connected with were my lovely, beautiful guy friends. Like they were just my beautiful soul people, right? And my, you know, being a musician, I was in bands and I was in, you know, orchestras and things like that. And so many of my guy friends, we'd just like travel together, and it was just like there was a connection there. And I was no longer allowed to have connections with other men in that way. And that felt like such a loss to me. And it's not that I needed to have them as a partner, but I literally couldn't have them as like a deep friend because that could affect my marriage, right? And so we want things that we can't have. That's just kind of how we are, right? So it's kind of.
Do you mean just in general, or like if we're within a prescribed marital setup?
No, I mean just anything. If someone says, here's chocolate, but you can't have it, all of a sudden you want chocolate, right? Like, we start thinking about what we're not supposed to do or what we're not supposed to have, you know, and this is why, you know, premarital sex in the funny enough, at the church that I was at, I think pretty much all the teenage girls, and it was a small congregation, pretty much all the teenage girls got pregnant. Why? Because nobody was teaching them about safety or anything. They were just telling them, you can't do this.
Right.
And we are not talking about it. So there's no outlet to like figure out how to handle that or how to, you're just not supposed to do it. So, and then all these pregnant girls, one by one, as they got pregnant, they'd have to come to the front of the church and apologize for their sin. Like, let's just shame them. Like on top of like, now they're a teen pregnant mom and it's going to be hard. Let's add shame on top of that. Do you know what I mean? So in our culture, and I'm glad that that's not as much shame, but it still is. Oh, teen mom or whatever.
Oh, I've experienced those kind of things as well. Yeah. Right? And not myself, but you know, I've seen those apologies that were just terribly painful because there was nothing to apologize for. It was pure shame.
It was just total shame. And it wasn't their decision to apologize. It's not like they were like, it's like they would have been shunned kind of if they didn't. And I just thought, oh, why are we doing this to these girls? And I mean, it was just like, oh, such terrible decisions, whatever. It's like, well, why is sex the only terrible decision that we hold people accountable for? Like that doesn't.
Right. There's a real hyper attention on sex and sexuality. You could call it an obsession.
It is.
Really. It is. Like the church is totally obsessed with sex. Is like, oh, you're talking to that man and he's not your husband. Are you guys having an affair? Wow. You know, how do you go from here to there? It's because you're totally obsessed with sex.
Right. And it's so weird. And, but if you think about it, like it's kind of the perfect setup.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you keep people on the straight and narrow? Or how do you keep people in a group and keep them relying on something? They're relying on, so if the church is saying it's bad, you can't have sex, you can't think about sex, you can't lust in your mind. That's as much of a sin as actually doing it. Like,
Right.
this is how powerful this is. Well, all of a sudden the church owns your mind, and what do you have to do? Well, now you have to repent, and now you have to come back to God, and now you have to like ask for forgiveness, and it's this loop. So you're always in need of forgiveness, and you always need to be reaccepted back because you've sinned. So like, how do you keep people, connected to you and like keep the flock together? Is that you create like this shameful thing where they need to be forgiven, they feel awful about themselves, and so they have to come back, and I think that originally, like, that was a big part of religion, is because, like, if you look at like the Greek times, it was like Greek, there was like houses, it was sacred, like these women that were whores, for lack of a better word,
Yeah,
right?
women and men, there were bathhouses all over the place.
Yeah, like this was like
Yeah.
the goddesses or whatever, and you could go and it was like a good thing, right? And then
Yeah, it was
the
positive. It was
yeah, and the
healthy.
Christian church was like, oh, that's terrible, and we can't be like them. And it's just like, let's use sex, the thing that everybody most naturally wants. Take the one thing, and let's corrupt it. Let's make it a terrible thing, and then you can control the people. So it's been an interesting thing to look at how sex has been seen throughout
Yeah.
history, and how it was
And cultures.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's so like besides the kind of Anglo or Judeo-Christian culture we see, in many parts of the world, whether it's Asia or Africa, sometimes South America, when you get very much the same reactions, is just perhaps replacing the church mandating it with your family mandating it,
Mm-hmm.
or with your culture mandating it. But it is definitely a control most of the time of women
Yeah.
and their sexuality, and having to be contained and owned very, very carefully.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, causing women the necessity to actually shut it off, because it's not, it's not like this switch that you can turn on and off whenever it's appropriate to feel sexual. It's like, oh, you're going to be virginal until the very moment when you shouldn't be, and then you just can turn it on, and then you'll turn it back off when it's done. Like, it just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. And and I mean, I don't want to come across like I'm just so down on the church and things like that. It's just, I had to really, really, it was my everything. And for me to even question anything was so hard. So I had to really go through the whole process and look through everything, really be a critical thinker, and I listened to debates and all this kind of stuff, and it was just like the most heart-wrenching thing to watch the thing that I loved so much just kind of fall apart. And then you feel like you have no direction for a little bit, and then I remember the day, this was one of the most beautiful things. I was sitting with one of my a cappella groups, a ladies group, and there was a lot of women that were churchgoers, but like, they weren't fundamentalists. They were Catholics, or those people, right? Which was to me not even Christian, right? Which you laugh because you're like, yeah. Now I'm like, it's all kind of the same kind of thing. But as a fundamentalist, no. We are the only ones that had the truth, right? So I was better than them. Like, I was taught to think that I had some superior knowledge. They just know. And so I don't like who I was then. Like, I didn't realize how kind of awful I was, because I had to be something that really was not natural for me. it was all kind of learned behavior and mimicking things, right? Like I regurgitated the things that I had learned and made them my own. And I remember the day I looked around the room and I was like, I am no better than anybody in this room. And it's like, I just felt so much love for
It's
everyone.
liberating.
And I was like, I can love everyone equally. I don't have to judge them. I don't have to even think about what they believe because it makes no relevance, has no relevance on my connection to them. We're doing music together and it's a beautiful thing. Like, why do I need to add this other layer of judgment, you know? And I remember just that freeing feeling, you know? And it's just that unlocked a whole deeper love for me, which was so, again, contradictory to what I had been taught. Like, that makes sense. You know, how are you having more love for people and how are you kinder and how are you more understanding when you're not trusting Christ for everything, right? So yeah, that was a huge thing. And then so yeah, that was probably one of the big moments, like aha moments. Yeah.
So can you take us into ethical non-monogamy? What is it?
Okay. So we talked about cheating and how what kind of causes cheating, right? This sort of idea that we are inherently connectors. We need community. We are sexual beings, and you know, we desire to have these things, but our society says that this is not okay, right? So we either shut it off or we do things like cheating and keep it a secret and can't be honest because of course it's not accepted to do that. Or you discover something like ethical non-monogamy where respect and honesty is like the highest value, right? And so all of a sudden you can explore and discover the complete essence of your true authenticity without shame and without guilt. And it's all honest because you're talking about it together and you're coming and figuring this out together and you're, you know, having conversations about your fantasies and your desires and what you actually want in life, not what someone else wants for you, what you want and what you might like to explore or experience. And that, just that alone is hugely bonding and exciting, you know, as a couple to start to even fantasize about adding other people to your love life or, you know, think about going out and not even doing it, but just like thinking about it. And sometimes people have different fantasies like threesomes or orgies or things like that. But of course, that's all terrible things and you should never want those things. But being sex positive means you can explore in your mind anything you would like and try it on for size. The biggest thing is we don't want to hurt people and we don't want to be dishonest and disrespectful. So, of course, you're never going to act on anything unless you have consent and unless you're honestly respectful and things are all out in the open. And that's the beauty of ethical non-monogamy is that you now have an avenue to try things out and be yourself and loving and comfortable with the person you love, you know, and you're trying this together and you talk about it and you like talk about your boundaries and this and that. And you really create something for yourselves, not by like being avoidant about everything. Like, oh, well, let's talk about this. Or, oh, I have this desire. Bad. Oh, I can't think about it. Can't think about it. So I'm going to go watch porn and just kind of get that out of my system. And I'm not going to tell anybody about it. You know, I mean, porn was like the worst thing too for me. Like nobody, like that's going to ruin your marriage. It's going to ruin your marriage, you know?
Right. So is this something, looking into ethical non-monogamy, is this something that would still be positive for a couple that had no desire to have any kind of physical relationship with somebody outside of their marriage, but we're just interested in exploring their sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really important that it is an option, a non-shameful option, but some people don't ever want to interact sexually with other people, but they just like to be in that environment. They just like to feel the vibe. So when you enter into a community of people that are all sex positive and open and authentic, it's a whole different world. You know, like you talk about energy and energy exchange and like being around your tribe and around your people. Well, people who aren't shaming each other for sexual fantasies and sexual, being sexual, dressing sexy or whatever,
Right.
that is a whole different, I'm going to say, level of people. Not that they're better, but it's like a different level of sort of realization. It's an elevation in, like, you know, coming to grips with who you are and accepting who you are. And the women in this world, it's kind of a women-led community, I'm going to say, because the women call the shots in a lot of cases. It's very respectful. I was telling my daughter the other day, I was like, you know, I would feel more comfortable with you at a sex club than at a regular club. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah, because it's such a respectful environment. Like, nobody's going to grope you without your permission, because they're not going to last long in that world. If that's what they do, they're out, you know, and single guys are vetted and they have to pass some like strict, like, respect guidelines in order to even be allowed to be a part of that world, you know? So it is very safe and respectful. But the other side of ethical non-monogamy, and I don't want to forget that, because it's not just about swinging. It really isn't. Some people could care less about sex, and they just have a lot of love to give, you know? And that's the other side is polyamory. So you can have like swingers on one side and polyamory on the other side. And polyamory is not at all about the sex. The sex can be a part of it, but it's about other relationships and loving more than one person. And like I say often, it's like, when was the last time you were shamed for wanting another child? You know, oh, you can't possibly love your first child as much if you have another one. We don't put limits on love when it comes to parenting, but because there's an element of sex and intimacy and emotional intimacy, which is not allowed, we can't possibly love another partner. We can't possibly, you know, that's just terrible.
Right. The concept of loving two people at once is, you know, in almost every good romance movie, the love triangle. And yet we'll never admit it in real life. It's only in the movies you can have a love triangle. Even then, it's like usually
cry after those movies, always, because I thought it was so devastating that they had to choose. Why couldn't they just have both? I couldn't understand.
Ethical non-monogamous.
As a Christian, I was like, I don't understand. Like, why would it be so wrong? They're both different people. Like, why couldn't you just love both? Like, what would be the harm in that? Oh, no, that's not allowed, because sex is sacred and it can only be with one person, and you can't share a part of yourself, right? And it's like, there's all these rules about it, you know? And so my goal is just to normalize it. Like, I love monogamy. I was monogamous for a long time. But I want you to choose monogamy once you've looked at all the other avenues, and to go, yeah, monogamy is exactly what I want. Not I have to be monogamous because that's the standard, right?
Because that's the prescription. But it's monogamy. You were monogamous like in every way, whether it was emotional, physical, whatever other kinds of, you know. So if you were to be polyamorous, let's say you kept all of your best friends from college and you had intimate emotional relationships with that, could that be considered polyamory if you were married?
Yes. So polyamory is simply loving more than one. So that could be even a platonic relationship where there isn't any sex, but you have a deep love for someone, because it goes past the boundaries of what we normally look at. So that would
It's like
fall.
a soul connection or something.
Um,
Yeah.
and I remember the idea of like a work husband was like
Work
awful.
husband.
People say that, you know, like how,
Work monogamy.
right? But like
Yeah.
a work husband is someone that you just like
Yeah.
click with on a different level. And it's like,
Right.
again, everybody meets different needs or whatever. And like when I met my boyfriend, I was still married, and we just clicked on such a level that I'd never experienced before. And it was like, whoa, this is so interesting, you know? And I fell deeply in love with him, and I loved my husband very much too, you know? But not everybody's wired the same way. Um,
Yeah.
like, and we had talked about that. We had talked about, like, it grew into that, and it was totally like something that we were okay with. You know, but at some point, like, people have different needs. And like I talked about how we were never quite aligned from the beginning, like my husband and I, energetically and things like that. Great person, but just because someone's a great person doesn't mean they're a great fit for you. And again, we say your marriage has failed. And that was the hugest hurdle for me, because I knew at one point that wasn't healthy for me, because I was still wanting certain things from him that he was not willing to provide, you know, and he didn't want to have to do that. And I just wouldn't, I wouldn't take that, and I wouldn't accept it. But then I wouldn't let go, because it was like I couldn't let go. So I just had to keep resenting and blaming and shaming and all this kind of stuff. And that gets very exhausting. But it's because my programming was like, well, I can't leave, you know. And I have like an ability to love many people. Like I can love easily, and it's not like, it's not a difficult thing for me, and it doesn't take away from other people at all. It's not like I just like, oh, I fall in love with them and then I ignore the other person. But some people don't have capacity for loving more than one person, and that's fine. They just need to know that, you know. And I think that my ex, that's the way he's wired more, you know, that, you know, and the fact that we just didn't have a lot of things that aligned or whatever. So we consciously uncoupled. And you talk about conscious divorce, right?
Yeah.
So we very much consciously uncoupled and decided, you know what, like, you know, like in poker, you know, we've had a good run. Time to fold, you know, and maybe that's the best thing, because what we wanted for our futures was completely different. So why are we fighting to make this work, you know? And so I think that that was the biggest hurdle, is to get over this sort of shame of forever being not working as a failure, because all I ever wanted in my life is a successful marriage, and to prove that I could have a great marriage, unlike my parents. You know, I've read relationship books since I was in high school. It's just always been a passion of mine to communicate, learn to communicate, and just make sure that I had that all. Like, it was my main priority my whole life. And then to realize, like, we just don't really have much in common at all. Like, you know, and then just like leaving the church, there was like, we were allowed to sort of think outside the box a little bit and go, well, why? Like, who says that you can't leave? Like, why is that such an important thing? And I remember when we separated, we told the kids, they were like, I'm so surprised you stayed together as long as you did. We're like, well, okay, you know,
well, they know you best.
Yeah. And he still lives in the basement, and like, it's fine, you know, and it's not going to be permanently like that. But like, all I'm saying is that we don't have to hate someone just because we're not necessarily right for each other. And I think like we celebrate people that are in terrible relationships. We celebrate them being married for 50 years and like hating each other's guts. We celebrate that. And then we shame people who honor themselves and their soul,
who love each other too.
Yeah. We shame them for failing their marriage, or leaving, or like not being committed. Well, if you know me, you know I am probably one of the most committed people that you will ever meet. but you can only be as committed as your partner, right? Like, I mean, you
And
have
committed to what? Committed to what? To the institution or to each other's well-being and happiness?
exactly. And so that was such a hard pill to swallow. And especially being in this field of work, everybody's going to, oh, well, see, that's ethical non-monogamy. That's why it didn't work. No, that's not why. What I discovered in this world is my authenticity and my power and my beauty and my, you know, I was like, oh, I am sexy. Oh, I am desired. Oh, I had no idea, you know, like just
Yeah.
little things like that that I just didn't know. And that's okay. And you can choose if you're going to just be okay with mediocre, and that's fine. You can be. But we also both found people that were like perfect for us in other ways, like completely. And it was like, well, why are we trying so hard to make a square block fit into a hole, you know?
Yeah.
When a round hole, when if we just allowed each other to just be truly ourselves, we could just be authentic and live, you know? And that's probably been one of the biggest lessons, because it has been the best decision. And I have the best relationship with my kids now. Like, it freed me up to just be authentically, energetically me. I was devoting all my energy to someone who didn't actually want my energy.
Right.
Who never asked that of me. But because that's what I was supposed to do, I was giving up myself on a regular basis. And I'm not saying everybody who's monogamous is doing that. That's not, again, I'm not against monogamy, but I do want you to choose it. And I don't want you to feel like you have to hold on to shame if, you know, if that season has ended. You know, relationships can be like, Glennon Doyle said this the other day, that relationships can be like annuals or perennials, right? Like some relationships are like just keep blooming forever, and some are annuals and they're meant to be for a time, but it doesn't mean that they're not worth it, and that you didn't enjoy their beauty, and that their nutrients are not in the ground now to create something new and to give you a different lease on life, you know? And I just thought that was so
to grow you.
Because he's always going to be a part of me. And he was so instrumental in me growing up. Like, we were 22. We didn't even know who we were at that point, you know? And we like helped each other. I would still be in the church, much to my parents' dismay. I would still be in the church if I hadn't have been married to him, right?
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that he was willing to investigate and step outside, because I found freedom in a way that I never would have found. And I absolutely 100% love who I am now, like so much. And I love how I treat people, and I love the love that I can give people authentically without having to agree with them, without having to know, like, we can agree to disagree. It's beautiful. And I wasn't allowed to agree to disagree. You know, they had to think like I did, you know? And so there's just a lot of things that play into that. And this community has been sort of a safe haven. And like, my friends, I have the best of friends in this world. And, you know, my partner and I now, we've been together 4.5 years, and it's like just such a beautiful relationship that we have. And and the thing is, we want the same things in life, and we desire the same things. So just sort of the last piece that I'd like to say is, like, sort of the secret to like having a healthy, thriving relationship. A lot of people say it's communication. But I would disagree with that, because you can know all the communication tools and you can communicate all you want. But if you don't have connection and safety, doesn't matter what you communicate or how you communicate. So connection is like, you have to have at least one love language that matches up, you know? and have at least some of the same physical needs or needs of some sort, right? Quality time has to look the same for both of you on some level, because some people's like just sitting together in a room reading a book, that's quality time. But to someone
Right.
else, it's like, no, we have to be touching or we have to be having a conversation at the same time. That's what's fulfilling. So even if quality time is your same love language, you got to talk about that. What does that actually look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that was the only one that lined up with my ex and I. That was the only one that lined up. And our views of quality time were so different. It made so much sense when I was like, oh, and if you have nothing that lines up in that way, you can try all you want to speak their language. And I did, but I don't understand it. And I can't speak it that way. I don't know how. And I've tried, and he can't speak mine no matter how much he tries. That's not in him.
Right.
It's just not. And he could try all he wants.
So we're both feeling quite empty and unsatisfied.
Yeah. And
unable to meet each other's needs.
Exactly. And you feel like a failure all the time. Like, I'm trying my best, but not, And then there's the other thing is like, you have to have the similar energy reciprocation, right? Like there can't be one person taking someone's energy, or there can't be one person just giving all their energy and the other person doesn't want it.
Good point.
You have to have, you have to be ready to receive some energy. I give you energy, and then you are filled up, and then you can give me some of your energy back. And so we're both still full.
Yeah, right? I teach my children that one too, actually, the whole sustainability cycle within a relationship. It cannot sustain itself if it's not replenishing itself. It will go dry.
It's true.
Eventually, it will go dry, or it will get really angry, which is what a lot of women do. We're stuck in this martyr archetype, this victim of, I've given everything and I'm, sucked dry, and now I'm all bitter and angsty.
Well, you're bitter, and then you hear, well, I didn't ask that of you.
Yeah.
It's like, what? You should be thankful or whatever, and again, like, and then the piece of safety, right? Like, how do you create safety in a relationship? Well, that comes with accepting someone for who they are and not judging them, and loving them even if they don't meet all your needs, like, and not relying on them. And so giving them the space to be themselves authentically.
Yeah.
And when you have those things, then you can communicate just about anything, even if you don't always have the best language.
Right.
Right? Because there is this safety. And then the other piece to having a healthy, thriving relationship for me is that you have to have novelty. And that novelty can look like whatever you guys want it to look like, but there has to be some. You can't just sit at home and be a parent forever and not have things start to fall apart, because Esther Perel talks about, like, you want to feel safe and connected, and then you want to have a lover to boot that is like, your crazy erotic love, but you can't have those two at the same time. You have to be able to create space between each other and observe each other in different environments, and watch your partner do something that they love, and you grow in appreciation. Well, the lifestyle is a great example of that. Like, when I see my partner from afar and I see other people admiring him or other women flirting with him, I'm like, oh, they like him like I do, and they think he's special, and I know he's special. And there's just something, and again, it renews your like energy for each other, and you see each other in a different light, and you dress up and you look your best, and it's a very empowering environment. And people think, oh, I'd be so jealous. But really, if you think about it, like, I get to allow my partner to be completely themselves and be whoever they are. And I choose to love them on a continual basis. And they don't have to be with me because I'm not hanging on to them. I don't own them. I don't need them to be with me and choose me alone. And therefore, you keep choosing each other because You just are so grateful for each other why wouldn't you keep coming back to that person that just wants you to be who you are? Like, it's just such a beautiful thing, and nobody thinks of it that way, you know? So
yeah, it's such a stark departure from the way that we were trained and raised is, you know, you should be with the person that sticks to the rules and the prescriptions rather than the person who is, you know, fully authentically out discovering whatever they want to discover and allowing you to do the same. It feels dangerously dangerously distant when in fact it's true intimacy, right? When you can actually share who you are with somebody. So I've got another question for you, which is like the series on Netflix, which is fantastic, just came out called Sex, Love, and Goop. Where we're talking about all these different kinds of sexuality, you know, and I discovered a while back that I was an energetic sexual, you know, which needs a lot of that space and that tension and that, you know, working on the energy between people. And, you know, there were 5 different types of turn-ons or potentially even sexual activity. Like for me, maybe holding a hand might be even more sexual than penetration, for example. So monogamy takes on a whole different tone when you're talking about holding hands, you know, versus something else. And then you have the entire spectrum of people in their sexuality, right? Which is highly genetic. I mean, we have people who are homosexual or people who are trans or people who are asexual, people who are demisexual. If you don't know those terms, look them up. You know, some people have very little desire. Some people only have romantic desire and not physical desire. There is this whole spectrum of human sexuality that we haven't allowed ourselves to explore or even been educated on. And when you were mentioning that some people are more prone to cheating or more prone to having multiple partners, that's actually, you know, has been researched in neuroscience as these people have a genetically different makeup, different hormones going on in the brain. And I'm like you know, I love people. I connect with people easily. It's easy for me to fall in love with who they are, have intimate relationships. There's no way that I could only have one intimate relationship for my entire life. I would feel like I was dying or starving because I love connecting. I love connection. So that's a really long setup to the question. If somebody's single or if somebody's in a relationship and they haven't had the opportunity to really like let loose and investigate and find out what the entire sexual spectrum is, you know, and what are all the different options and maybe where do I fall in the mix and how do I explore this? What would be the first steps to take or what would you advise for them?
I think first, like, okay, so I do these VIP couples fantasy weekends, and the purpose is to like create intimacy with couples and make sure that they're on the same page and that they can talk about these things. And the first thing I want people to know is that there's no shame in your desires or your fantasies. Just thinking through them and they don't even have to come true. They don't have to come true. You just have to explore what it is that you might like in like a perfect world. Like what would I be up for? Or what would I ever want to try? And it doesn't mean you have to try that. You just tells you a lot about yourself, tells you a lot about what your desires are, who you are, what kind of energy you like. You know, are you a connector with people or do you like your space? Do you only want sex when you feel connected to someone? Or do you just like have sexual urges that don't need a connection? That tells you a lot about who you are. And so what my job is to figure out like where you are on that spectrum, because it is a spectrum. Ethical non-monogamy, it's not just doesn't look like one. Like some swingers are like, they don't even want friends. It's like they'll never have sex with the same people again. They don't want to connect at all with people. Those are not my people, right? That's not the kind of people. My people, a lot of them are just more social swingers. Like we just hang out, we dance, and we just have fun together, and we camp together, we do things together. And it's just like this family. It just feels so connected and loving. And it's like they're your people and they know you for who you are, and you can be naked around them or not or whatever. It's just everything's okay, and you can just be yourself. That's where I fall. And then I'm also on the polyamory spectrum, which is probably why I fall more in that connected world, right? Like I want the connections. I want the same people to hang out with, you know. But I also like variety. So like when I meet new people, it's so exciting to have new cool people to learn about or whatever. Sex can or can't be a part of it. It doesn't matter to me. That, you know, and it's probably because I did get a lot of that out of my system in the beginning, and I kind of know what I like and I don't like now. The other thing I would say to people is that just because you dip your toes doesn't mean you can't get out. And it's not going to taint you. Like, so like
Yeah.
when you lose shame around sex, it's not like this sacred thing that's going to be lost or ruined, right? You can dip your toes and go, you know, I don't like this pool, you know, like I don't like this temperature of water. I'm going to step out and I'm going to try a different one. You just dry off your feet and then it's fine, you know, like, but if you put way too much expectation, or if you're like, then you're going to struggle with being able to just kind of explore things about yourself. So people who are single, I would say like find a community, and just go in the community to just make connections and find out, talk to people, talk to me, whatever, about just allowing yourself to kind of figure out what it is that you like. And the thing is, so with my clients, like once this weekend is over and they've kind of figured out where they lie and what they maybe want to try or whatever, then if they want to keep working with me, I'll take them like a 9-month to 12-month where I like really help them integrate, get them into this world safely. So it's not going to ruin their relationship. They can have the conversations, we debrief. I'm going to take them to events that we curate, the kinds of ones that are going to meet their needs. Like I know the kinds of things that, because I've been polyamorous and a swinger on all the spectrums, and I've explored it all. And I'm deeply in both worlds, you know, and I have friends in all the worlds. And so it's like there's a place for everyone. And if you just want to just be with your people and be with people who are just really cool and easygoing, that's as far as it can go. And you can take that eroticism and that energy and just take it with you and leave with that, and just let that spice up your sex life with your own partner. As a single person, it is a respectful community, so you can really get to state your boundaries in it. When you feel safe with people, you can start to explore with people, you know, whether men or women. Like some people like, you know, threesomes with two men, and some people like it with two women. It's things that people want to explore, and it's about finding your safety and your comfort level. And it's like when I connect with people, that's when I want to explore more. And my partner's that way too. So a demisexual is actually someone who needs a connection in order to interact sexually. However, connection doesn't always have to mean love. There's a difference there, right? Yeah. And I think that, oh shoot, now I've had sex with them, I have to be in a relationship. You know, we can let go of that programming. It's okay, because it's not this binding thing. It doesn't have to be. And it's all about the mindset. If you think it is, then you're going to be like, that's my, you know, I'm giving myself away and I'm going to, but that's our training, you know. So much of our society our upbringing has been about that, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah, the relationship escalator, as we say. So it's literally just kind of tying back to the very beginning of your story, which was really checking in with yourself instead of taking cues from outside of yourself. And having the safety to be able to do that with your partner and your friends.
It is honestly the most amazing thing to literally be able to have those conversations with your partner and just be like, I love just exploring with you. And it's like, it makes me just like feel so connected to him, because there's nothing off limits. There's nothing off limits to talk about. And if he feels uncomfortable with something, we can explore where that's coming from. If I feel uncomfortable with something, we can explore where that's coming from. We might never do that, but at least we are able to dig deep and not just go, oh no, you can't do that, just to protect ourselves. We actually get to explore a little deeper, like, where is that fear coming from? Oh, that's triggering some fear in me. Do I have some insecurity about something? And ethical non-monogamy is a world, like, if you do it well, if you integrate well, you learn the most amazing relationship skills that are just like I mean, I never imagined I could be in a relationship like this, and it's just it's so beautiful, and it's such an exchange of energies. And it doesn't mean it's always super easy, but because we have that connection and that safety, and that we understand that we honor each other's differences and authenticity, we always can have a conversation safely, because
yeah, I love that you've shared all this. So thank you for taking so much time to really go into depth in this topic. And I love investigating the world of ethical non-monogamy and relationship, the developments that we're having, because, we're coming to a place of new consciousness, I think, where we're allowing people to be more authentic, allowing more truthful conversations, creating safe spaces to have those truthful conversations, and allowing for huge differences between people and what we really need and what we really desire, and to be honest about that instead of pretending like we're copy and paste individuals. So it's wonderful that you're sharing so openly about your story and helping other people. How can they reach you? You said you did the weekend with the couples. Do you have, and you do one-on-one coaching, right? Or you do couples coaching?
Yeah, I can do both of those. So
couples and one-on-one. Okay. Yeah, to help people kind of figure themselves out and acclimate to whatever suits their needs for growth and desires, and you kind of host them or hold them through it, right?
Yeah, like I like to say, I'm like a warm blanket. I wrap around you, and I provide safety for you to just really explore, and I'm there with you all the way, and that's something that I don't think a lot of people do. I mean, just to have that, to have access to someone, and to just be able to bring up those conversations, and then to be able to debrief after. Because I mean, a lot of people leave, they'll go to a swinger club and they really enjoy it, or they'll go to an event, they really enjoy it, and then there's like one little thing, and then they're like, okay, we can't do that anymore. But it's actually not as big as they think. It's just that triggered some fears in them, but they don't know where it comes from, and they don't have anyone to talk to.
Right. How do you work through those?
Who are you going to talk to about it? You don't know anybody yet, or whatever. So I really, I love to just have exploratory kind of conversations with people. Like, what is it that, like, what do you want to know? And what, let's spend time together, and let's just get to know this world. Let's answer your questions, and then let's see how it can fit in for you. And we'll figure it out as we go. And I do have a lot of worksheets and things like that, just teachings on like boundary setting and your needs, and figuring out how you can meet your own needs, and then what you need from other people that you can't give yourself, because to understand those things is really important.
So essential.
So,
I wish you were teaching sex education in school instead of the trainings that I received anyways. I mean, can you imagine, a whole generation of kids that are really empowered to listen to themselves and meet their own needs and set their own boundaries and respect other people's boundaries and talk things through? Like, what a different world this would be.
And I honestly, I can see it in my kids, you know, compared to like some of their friends. Like we can have such open, honest conversations in our house. My kids are 15, 18, and 20. And, you know, they can tell me anything. And there was no slut shaming in this house. It started to happen. Some of the friends, you know, were like slut shaming some of the girls at school. And I was like, hold up. We don't do that in this house. And here's the reason. Like, why is it shameful for that girl? If she is enjoying her pleasure, why can't she go and enjoy her pleasure? Why are you shaming her for that? If you don't want to enjoy yours, that's fine. That's fine. But don't be calling her a slut. And then the guy, he doesn't get called a slut. Like, that's not okay. I said, you know, and then the same kids were like asking me about sex toys and all kinds of stuff. And so like, here we are having conversations about anything's on the table, right? I mean, the fact that I could tell my daughter that I would feel safer with her at a sex club than at whatever. And she's actually, it's like, well, maybe sometime I'll go, but like, I don't want like your friends, like wanting, and I was like, no. Like there's boundaries. Like you don't have to like hang out with my friends, but you can just be a part of like she's like, I don't want old people around. I was like, all right, I know.
There's boundaries.
But like the part about the sex is not the part that bothers her, because my kids have a very healthy view of sex and it's not shameful. And I'm so thankful for that. Because when I was a Christian mom, I was a very good mom. I always like took that role so seriously. But like my oldest daughter continually would ask, is that wrong? Is that wrong? Is that wrong? She lives with anxiety because I was so like, it had to be a certain way because this is what we were taught and this is what the Bible says, and you have to think a certain way. And that's what I was brought up to think, right? And now it's like, they get to be who they are. They get to tell me who they actually are. And they're, you know, like they're responsible when they go out with their friends or parties or this or that, because at home they got to experiment with their limitations and we got to talk about if they got into this situation or not. And they didn't have to pretend to be doing all the right things. And I just think if we could create that safety for, like, I had 3 teenagers and I've loved the whole time. I've never had rebellious kids. And I think a lot of that is the fact that they got to just be themselves, right? Like I didn't have to lay down the law all the time. Like we walked through the things, we walked through, you know, the scenarios, and I wasn't judging everything all the time, which was a huge departure from what I was before. I just can't even imagine how I would have parented differently. And I'm just like, I remember the first thought that came to mind when my husband said that he was no longer a Christian. And I was like, oh, we have 2 girls. Like, what are we going to teach them about sex?
Wow.
That was the first thing that came to my mind. I was devastated. Like, all of a sudden, we're not going to be able to teach them the same thing about sex.
That's so telling, isn't it? About the programming. It is about control of sexuality hugely. Yeah. That was one of my first concerns as well with my ex-husband was, you know, how are you going to teach the kids right from wrong if their father isn't going to be upholding those standards? Right? And it was always about right and wrong and making sure that they were staying in line so that they didn't go into the danger zone, keeping them quote unquote safe, but keeping them in line, because I have 2 girls.
But when you do that, they don't know how to make their own decisions. But if you talk through it and you're like, this is what can happen. And if then they learn how to make good decisions. And then when they go out into the world, when they leave home, my oldest daughter lives in downtown, in an apartment 2 hours away. And she can make her own decisions about her life because she hasn't been told what to do her whole life.
Yeah.
she's gotten to figure it out, and we've talked about, okay, well, what would you do here, and what, you know, and they were allowed to fail multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And they failed here where I could keep an eye on it.
Mm.
You know, they failed repeatedly so that when they went out, then they had learned how to, you know, how much alcohol can you consume without losing consciousness, or how much alcohol, you know, like where's your, where you cannot no longer state your boundaries, or where you make bad decisions. All right, so that was a bad decision, but at least you were here and I could keep you safe, or you know what I mean?
Right.
So they learned, and now it's like, all my friends just want to go and party and drink and get drunk, and I don't care to get drunk. I don't need to. Like I get to just enjoy the limits that they have figured out for themselves. Just things like that. Do you know what I mean? But I could have been like, you can't drink, you're not of age, you know, or
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, sex, you can't have sex till whatever. And you know, what I got instead is, Mom,
Wow.
having
Yeah.
a party. I'm not having a party. That is too much work. And I was like, are you sure? Like, no, I'm not having any more parties. I'm like, okay.
Perfect.
I didn't even have to tell you you couldn't, you know what I mean? But it's like they got to learn that, yeah, it is a lot of work reining in teenagers that are drunk and stuff like that. But again, it was here. I allowed it here. And they got to experience firsthand that no, we don't want to do that. We didn't like the whole you know, or whatever. So
yeah, you're gonna do all of life together in full openness.
Yeah. And I think
it's hard to imagine for a lot of people, I'm sure. You know, I'm still working my way back from, you know, the programming with my daughter and with both of my daughters, but my eldest daughter, you know, sometimes I'll catch myself, like I'll see her in something, you know, wearing something really short or wearing this halter top, and I'll just, you know, like get that reaction, like, what do I, should I say something? Should I not say something? And, you know, sometimes I just like, I get torn because my immediate thought is danger, danger, you know, danger. But we talk about everything, and that's, that was one lesson I learned, is to talk through everything and all of our emotions and everything. So
when you're allowed to fail, right? You're allowed to fail as a mom. And
yeah,
they
exactly.
know that we don't have all the answers and we don't get it right all the time, you know. Sometimes we have to learn from our mistakes too, safely, you know. But it's funny because
I shared that as well.
My girls sometimes are like, Mom, you can't wear that. That's
it's the reverse.
I'm like,
actually, you know what? Yeah, I think my girls have done that to me too, but my mom still does that to me. She's like, your shirt's a little low.
I'm like, too bad. I like it, you know. But you know, I'm not doing it for someone else. I just feel good this way, and I'm not like, you know. But it's so funny. Oh, Mom, you're too old to wear that. Or all right, you my friends then, because oh, so funny.
Well, yeah, we're all here to live together.
Yeah.
And discover ourselves and discover each other. So it's all part of the journey. But
for sure.
So how can people reach you if they want to go and discover their couple themselves a little bit deeper?
Yes. So you can reach me on Instagram at Karine Bedard Coaching. So Karine Bedard Coaching, and I have a website, www.karinebedardcoaching.com, and
is all the info on about your weekend and how it works.
So you can book a call with me or message me on, just DM me, and you know, we can start a conversation that way, because it looks different for everybody. So it's a bespoke program. So, which is cool. Like, it's a very luxury, bespoke, very customized to what you need. And, so we need to have a conversation and figure out what it is that you're looking for to begin with. And then
Nice.
go from there. So it's very geared to everybody, because not everybody is one size fits all. So
Exactly. It's your best sex life vacation tailored to you.
sure, for sure.
That's like a dream come true.
Yeah.
Oh, we should have those. We should have those everywhere. I don't know if anybody else does that, but I love that you're doing that.
So yeah.
So thanks. Thank you for joining me and sharing. And I'll put your link. I'll share your link as well if people want to get a hold of you. And, I love having these conversations more and more, regardless of what people are desiring or what they're not. And, maybe some people would like to check out ethical non-monogamy and polyamory and swinging, but we, as a society, I think we can all benefit from these conversations. Even our teens, getting to know yourself, getting to know each other, allowing for open conversation and exploration. Do you have any last words that you'd like if you could get it through to everybody's heads, if there was one message that you would want to share?
I was thinking about that. I was like, I think freedom to me is not non-monogamy. Freedom is an open mind and sex positivity. And sex positivity doesn't mean sex. It means a way of looking at sex and the world, right? Without shame. And so my desire is to normalize and destigmatize other relationship arrangements and ways of having a relationship, so that people can have choices, because everybody's a little bit different, right? And so if there's a lot of people that lose their jobs or their kids in custody battles because of their choice to be a swinger or polyamorous, because there's so much judgment around it. And I just want the judgment to go away. I just want it normalized so that people can just have choices. It doesn't have to be your choice. I'm not saying that. It may not be. You can come and explore with me, and at the end of the weekend, it might not be for you. And that's perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. But I want you to leave with an open mind and a little bit more educated and more sex positive, so you can take that into your own world and live those truths. And you never have to not be non-monogamous, or you never have to be, non-monogamous.
Yeah. But surely your sex life would get better.
Yeah. And I think that we just need to be able to have conversations, the hard conversations, and take away that shame, because it holds us back from having our best life. Like some women have never orgasmed because they don't know how to let go. They just can't get out of their head. Something is stuck in there because it's wrong, right? Like deep down, they just can't shut off that programming that they shouldn't enjoy it. It's a thing they have to do for their husbands or something. So I just want those things to change, So if I can just affect changing people, not changing. So I'm not here to change minds. I'm here to open minds. So it's really like opening people's perspectives and minds, and just to be open to seeing things a little bit differently. And that's all. That's all. If the world could just be a little bit more open, then we could all live together the way that we'd like to live and not judge each other for it.
Yeah. I think we can take that message out to everywhere, every arena. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Yep. Good to talk to you. I think your dogs are beckoning you, and my bed is beckoning me. But you can see Karine is very approachable. It's getting late. So but I encourage all of you to get in touch with her if this is something that you want to explore. Obviously, she's a delightful, warm-hearted, warm blanket kind of a person. So, okay, I send you love. Thank you, Karine.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun to chat with you again. I loved it. So thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you for sticking around.